everyone, and welcome into the Nittany Game Week podcast. I'm Todd Sadowski alongside Jay Paterno and Tom Bradley, former Nittany Lions assistant coaches, and 9-1. They're making it through the season almost unscathed. That Ohio State loss still sitting there, but it's not hurting them in the overall rankings as they are number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. It is keeping them on the outside, though, when it comes to the Big Ten championship. It's hard to be 4th in the country and still be 4th in your conference. That's kind of strange. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Let's get to the recap of what we just saw at Purdue. And I think it's as much about as impressive Penn State was with the array of players that reached the end zone and how unimpressive the Boilermakers are. You guys have seen that program at its peak, and now you've seen it at its valley.
I mean, when you look at the Big Ten, there's only one team right now that has no chance of getting the bowl game. It's Purdue. It's one of the worst Big Ten teams we've seen in a while. But let me just say one thing about Purdue as an engineering school. I wouldn't send my kid there based on the end zone design with putting a black border outside a black end zone with more pylons. Cost him a touchdown. Not that it was, cost the game, but if you're thinking about going to school in engineering, go to Penn State, not Purdue, because they can't even paint an end zone right.
Yeah, that made absolutely no sense.
Poor receiver catches like, what's that pylon in front of me?
Can you blame him, though? I mean,
no, there's no delineation.
I always say, just when you think you've seen everything when it comes to sports or that kind of stuff, something new pops up, and there's a double end zone that the guy gets confused and on his own home field, nonetheless.
Well, years ago in Rec Hall, the Nittany Lion used to wear the home jersey. And there was a basketball player who I will not name was trapped in the corner and was looking for an outlet and whipped a perfect pass to the Nittany Lion who caught it. Dick Harder was the coach. The next game, the Nittany Lion was wearing the opposite jersey. But he was open.
That's right.
He should have gone in for a layup.
He should have shot the 3.
Yeah, you know who the player is probably.
Yes,
so I'm going to keep
Usually the Nittany Lion can jump, too. He could have thrown it down. So,
yeah.
Tom, your impressions, though, overall, the pummeling of Purdue, 49-10. They were, did a nice job on defense, offensive, to improve to 9-1. Here
they
we
went
are.
and took care of business. I was a little confused, but as I told you, Purdue's game plan, I didn't understand it. They're playing Penn State. For me, it's going to be hold that ball. I'm going to figure a way to hold that ball and keep Penn State from getting it because they weren't going to stop them. Their defense is very, what's the word, porous?
Porous.
That might be one word. There's a lot of adjectives.
Civ-esque.
Yes.
But, I think the thing that surprised me about both Washington, more so with Washington and Purdue, because Washington's scheme set up to do it. But when you're playing Penn State's offense, there is one guy that you better make sure that you pay attention to. And they let Tyler Warren run wild. Washington let Tyler Warren run wild. If you look at Wisconsin, did a good job on Tyler Warren. Ohio State did a good job paying attention to Tyler Warren. Because if you're playing Penn State, you got to evaluate who's the guy that can absolutely beat us in every which way. And no matter how creative you get with formations and what you do with Tyler Warren, and I think one of the things for Minnesota is with an off week, they can spend 2 weeks really studying all the places he's been. When they practice against him, he'll probably have a green jersey or a red jersey on, so they're constantly talking about where he is because I think they match up pretty well on the outside. So you better take care of Tyler Warren.
We're watching video of 6 different players score 7 touchdowns. Tyler Warren scored twice, and they established him early, Tom. They got him involved early in the game in the first couple of drives, and they continued that. Other guys scored the touchdowns, but again, Tyler Warren, the lion's share of the load.
It's one of those things with Tyler Warren, though. Everybody on defense has to be involved to know where he is because he could end up anywhere. It's not like he's just going to be at the tight end or maybe in the slot. He could be at number 1. He can be the quarterback. He can be the tailback. He can be everywhere. Everybody has got to know where he is.
And even on a double pass, the receiver is running down the field closest to Eller, completely uncovered. And he threw it back to Warren. And that poor receiver probably feels like, the teammates of Wilt Chamberlain the night he scored 100 points. Hey, I was open too. That's what it's getting to be like. He's like Wilt Chamberlain.
So we'll see if Minnesota can do it, right? Can take Tyler Warren out of it, and then that puts all the pressure.
Just don't give up the big plays like everybody else.
So that then puts the pressure on the other guys, which Penn State has shown, if need be, they've been able to come through. Again, that many different guys reaching the end zone. I know it's Purdue, but you got Drew Aller that can throw the ball, big arm. He's been mobile. He's been giving himself and buying himself more time in the pocket. Play as an example, he finds Trey Wallace downfield as he bought some more time. Had a great run, big physical run that he had early in the game. And then you got the versatility if you bring in Bo Pribula, and you saw his straight line speed. So if you're a defensive coordinator, you're Minnesota's defensive coordinator, you're Maryland's defensive coordinator before we get to the playoff, if they get there, right? What are you doing? I mean, obviously you're taking care of Tyler.
My offense, hey, you guys think you could run the ball and maybe hold it? Well, that would be nice. We can stand, and I'll be a good spectator on the sideline. Oh, another first down, way to go. But I think if you want to stop Tyler Warren, the best way is not to have him on the field. So I think you have to analyze what you're doing on offense and say, listen, we might have to just start grinding out some drives and put some 10, 12 play drives together.
And I think pass rush is going to be key if you're playing Penn State, because Allard against Purdue was able to stand back there for a while and find guys, move in the pocket, and that kind of thing. I think the other thing is when you look at the straight line speed, two guys that you might want to start using on regular down run game. Pribula has shown a ability to read blocks and decisiveness and straight line speed that we have not necessarily seen from the tailback position in the 7 Big Ten games. Same thing with Warren. Warren is so decisive in the run game, reads the blocks perfectly, knows exactly how to time them up, and that's not easy to do as a part-time guy, which tells you the intellect level of him as a football
longest
player.
run for the guys, for the running back, Singleton and Allen, against Big Ten opponents is 24 yards. So I want to revisit the point, Tom, though, when you say, like with Coach Kotelnicki, what he's put on tape, right, as a defensive coordinator. You only have so much time to prepare for a team. And when you see all the different things, the different formations, the different stuff, how do you kind of budget that time during a week? Now, Minnesota's had 2 weeks, so it's a little bit different. But in a typical week, how do you budget that time to prepare for Penn State's offense?
You have to get a lot of it done on film. Plus, you're going to have to make up some things to where they're going next with this whole thing, But he's the factor in this game, and there's no way I would not let him. You got to have a great 4-man pass rush. I think you got to be able to make sure, hey, I'm going to chip him every time coming off the line of scrimmage. Somehow, some way, I'm going to bang him around. But he's not going to beat us.
That was the thing about Washington. Their whole scheme was set up to put a guy over the tight end. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
They got away from some of the basic stuff they did, which surprised me. But there's no question, if you can take your 2 corners
there you go,
and take the wideouts out of the game, which Minnesota may have the ability to do that, and make it a 9-on-9 game. Now you've made it a lot. You've constrained the field and made it a lot easier to identify where's Singleton the pass game and where is Warren the pass game, because those are the 2 guys that can give you problems in the pass game. They've shown them that
a
ability.
lot of people don't like to take that chance on the outside
no
perimeter.
question.
They don't, especially without pressure.
Right.
They
And
just don't want to
Singleton
do
really has been impressive in the pass game, what he's done. He hasn't done some of the things in the regular run game that he has, but he's done a good job coming out of the backfield.
So the point is, it's easier said and done, right, to take Tyler Warren out. But you're spending the time and you're spending the effort to do whatever you can to get him out of there. So then,
well, check number 1 is Pribula in the game or not?
Yeah.
If he's on the sideline, you breathe a little bit easier because he gives you some of that. So now you're in a drop-back pass game and without a quarterback run game. But that's the other X factor.
And so
And the other thing is we got to give some credit to the offensive line at Penn State. They've done a good job protecting. People don't talk about it, but they have done a really good job of keeping everybody clean back there.
no doubt. And Drew Aller underrated the protection he's done of taking care of the ball. I know Coach Franklin's brought this point up too, but he does a tremendous job of making careful decisions. He's not a risk taker, not a huge risk taker in there. When he sees something open, he's got a big enough arm to slide it in there. But if he has a 50-50 shot at something, he's tucking it under, or he's going to take the loss, or he's going to go get just 2 or 3 yards. He's going to take care of that football, no turnover. So he's done a really, really good job with that. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. And against Purdue, look, they had all of their quarterbacks off their footing immediately. I mean, they just hounded the quarterbacks right away. What do you like what you're seeing from Penn State's defense, Tom, that is going to carry on over to just about any opponent?
What I like is they're playing team defense. You just can't look at, it's one guy. They got a bunch of playmakers on defense. They're using them the right way. They're getting pressure when they need to. There's a lot of guys coming from different areas. Their corners, I think, are doing an outstanding job. I think the secondary is playing really well. And I just think as a unit, it's a very good football unit.
I think the challenge for this team defensively is not going to come likely till the playoff. I mean, because I think when you look at the Big Ten in terms of the quarterback play in the Big Ten across the board, and that's not just, that's not taking anything away from Penn State's defense because they've risen to every challenge. But I think this is the Big Ten in the last couple of years. One of the things that people in the SEC are all complaining about is the Big Ten's not real strong. When you look at the quarterback play in the SEC versus the Big Ten, it's at a different level. And I think that's one of the things that they're going to have to continue to improve, continue to get there, because I think if there's one area of that team that you can get to, I think if you can get matchups and linebackers on coverage, and if you can run the ball efficiently downhill as Ohio State did in that last drive, I think those are potential problem areas, but they have not played teams that have been able to take advantage of that. But they've done the things they've had to do, and they've dominated those teams.
And a lot of times the score has the other team can't do that. They have to throw it different. Ohio State was in a different situation. They, where they were, they gives them the opportunity to pound the ball.
I want to bring up two things that could concern the Nittany Lions and Nittany Lions fans this week against Minnesota. The size of the offensive line. There's been times Ohio State at the end of the game was able to run the clock out last 5 minutes by just running the ball straight forward. Bowling Green did a nice job early on offensively. They've got an experienced quarterback, Max Brosner, six-year quarterback. You look for him, if you're Minnesota, to make good decisions to take care of the football. Penn State's defense hasn't created a ton of turnovers. So if Minnesota takes care of the football, if they keep their defense on the sideline, Tom, by controlling the line of scrimmage a little bit and running the ball, those are some of the formulas that an opponent would look at to say this is a way to try and attack Penn State and potentially beat them. Plus, it's on the road, cold environment. Anything can happen. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of pressure on Penn State to continue winning, but those are some of the things, I guess, that would concern Nittany Lions fans if that Minnesota might be able to pull off.
Yeah, the one thing, if Minnesota's going to pull this off, they're going to have to get a lead, because then it'll give them the opportunity to hold the ball and run the ball. And that's what I think they would feel most comfortable at. They're not going to – I think they'd have trouble getting that pass game going to really, move the ball. I think this will be one of those games. It should – if they're going to win a game, it's going to be in the fourth quarter.
Well, the stat of the year for Minnesota is when they are even or minus in turnover margin, they lose. When they're plus, they win. And they are plus 12 for the year. And if Penn State goes out there and turns the ball over, there's a good chance Penn State gets upset if Penn State protects the ball. And you mentioned Al, keep being careful with it. But this is a team that has only turned the ball over 8 times, but they've gotten 20. And they're very aggressive in the secondary, so I think that's something to watch in this game. And they're aggressive up front. They don't get a lot of sacks, but they bat down a lot of balls. Yeah. They disrupt a lot. There's 40-something quarterback hurries. I mean, you're looking at a team that is maybe not getting there, but they're creating problems and creating secondary issues.
Fast start's a great point. I mean, that it solves a lot of issues. They were able to do that with Purdue, but, and allows your defense to play a little bit differently.
Yeah, there's a famous saying in the secondary. It's called, come on, pass rush.
Yeah. But, the last 2 weeks, Penn State has started out very quickly offensively. Wisconsin, they didn't, and they were in a ball game. Ohio State, they didn't start out as fast. So I think that's probably critical, because Minnesota's going to come off an off week. If they really look at the film, they're going to say, we played 3 opponents that they played, and we beat them about the same way they did. They're going to feel like they have a shot at this thing. And if you can come out and start fast and start to create doubt and get the crowd quieted, because they've sold out 3 or 4 games now. This will be a big crowd for them as well. It's going to be key.
Well, it has a Wisconsin-esque type of feel. When you're going to Wisconsin, you know what the weather is going to be. The crowd will be into it. Minnesota's had some good efforts. It's a really unpredictable team under P.J. Fleck. You never know what you're going to get. It's kind of that, consummate Big Ten team where you're like, I don't know how they're going to look today. You always see the Big Ten results, right? And you just go, how did Rutgers lose to this person after they beat this team last week? And so you don't know what you're going to get from Minnesota. So we'll see how it goes. But if they continue winning, Penn State, they're in really good position when it comes to the college football playoff. They're, again, 4th in the country. Now, that doesn't mean they would be seeded 4th. It means they would be seeded 6th because of the Big Ten championship situation. Oregon has been guaranteed a spot in the Big Ten championship game. Everybody watching to see what happens with Indiana and Ohio State. Penn State's only path to the Big Ten championship is with an Ohio State victory over Indiana. And if Indiana were to lose twice, or there would be another tiebreaker if Indiana finishes 11-1 when it comes to common opponents and whatever. I don't even know what it is. They only have 2 out of the 10 scenarios where they can make it to the Big Ten championship game. So
I think it's the magic 8 ball.
Yeah. Well,
should Penn State be in, or Indiana?
Something like that. But if
all
they end up,
signs point to yes.
When we were saying the college football playoff, Penn State seems to there's a lot of changing and a lot of stuff around them that could maneuver. If Penn State just wins out, it's likely they're going to be in the position that they're in now with a home game in the first round. It's just a matter of which opponent it would be, and it might be which SEC opponent. And that would be really, really fascinating time, as we've said.
You know what you say to your team? You guys are going to, they're talking, you're going to say, listen, forget the scenarios. You got to do one thing, win. That takes care of everything.
No doubt about it.
I think if they lose, they may be out.
I mean, you're a lot of pressure on them.
You're in serious jeopardy based on the perception of the Big Ten nationally, and you talked about it. Minnesota wins these 3 games, loses to Rutgers. Nebraska beats Colorado by 18. They're 5-1. They're 5-5. Iowa looks good one week. I mean, there's 3 teams or 4 teams rarely at the top of the Big Ten, and then there's a big drop off. There's a real big drop off of a bunch of teams that you could just jumble them in a bag and not know which one is which, and that's part of the perception of the Big Ten outside the conference. And I think that's why winning the next 2 are vital.
Yeah,
and I think when you look at it, 10-2 with your big win being Illinois and not a marquee non-conference game, that's going to be problematic.
All right. Take your coach hat off for a second, all right? Join the conversation when it comes to the playoff in the sense of, as a fan, and we've talked, and even as a coach, you said, I'd like to get that team up north if we could. Imagine an Ole Miss or Georgia, as it was slotted this week, coming up to Beaver Stadium in late December. How much fun would that be? And it would be fascinating to see some of these southern teams travel up to the north.
Would be. It would be really interesting, especially that snow flurries as they come across the field and that 15-mile-an-hour wind that blows from the north end zone through could create a couple problems because it's something you can't duplicate it. It's not like when you're up this way. Hey, we're going inside today. We're going into the field, into the Haluba Hall to practice today. You can duplicate that.
It's easier to get ready for heat than it is to get ready for cold. There's nothing. Look how many years the Tampa Bay Buccaneers couldn't win a game when it was below 30 degrees. Now, with our luck, it'll be 52 and sunny. I mean, the way this fall has gone, we've had November games. It's been great. But this is the scenario that everybody has wanted. All the SEC, every time they play a Big Ten team in a playoff game, it's in the South. Right. Or in a bowl game, it's in the South. And you know what? Come on up here and see what.
And here recently, there's been opt-outs, so you can't really take. It's apples and oranges.
Here's the other thing somebody brought up the other day: the Green Bay Packers won a few titles, and the weather was not great up there during those days.
No, absolutely not. So we'll see. But that's part of what makes football is you have to play in those things, and the elements become part of your game plan.
And that's what's happened with some of the Pac-12 teams that created the newly expanded Big Ten Conference, where they've traveled to the to the northern schools, where it's a little bit colder this time of year in November. The wind has always been a factor, that type of deal. All right, so the last thing we'll talk about is back to Tyler Warren and about the Heisman hype. He's somewhere in that 5th, 6th position. There's a couple of guys. Travis Hunter seems to be the odds-on favorite right now from Colorado, playing both sides of the ball. But the versatility there is in Tyler Warren's favor. Also, if he does what he's been doing all through the regular season against Minnesota and against Maryland at home on that senior day, what do you think? Does he have a chance? An invitation to New York? How do you guys feel this? You guys have seen this Heisman stuff play out and the college football player awards, that type of deal.
Why not Tyler? Why to me, and I said it a couple of weeks ago, he got my vote for the Heisman. Why not vote for him?
Big game. That's why. He has not had the moment in the big game. If they had run him up the middle against Ohio State and he dives over, he's in the top 3 conversation right now because they would play that clip over and over again. Penn State would be undefeated right now. He does,
even if it gets to overtime,
right?
Doing something in that regard.
Troy Smith won it in 2006, and the moment was the moment that projected him into that top 3 conversation was a scramble against Penn State and a throw off his back foot. And everybody, oh my God, look at this guy.
Thanks for the memory, Jay.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
But those are the things that get you. It's Desmond Howard doing high, and Warren has not had that. I'm not saying it's fair, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be. I think he should be. But the way these things go in terms of the hype, it gets that way. And right now, versatility is certainly a strength. But if you're scoring at home, Colorado has been hammering the versatility on Travis Hunter, playing both sides of the ball, 120 plays a game, which is unreal. they flew him out to Penn State the weekend of Ohio State. Even that weekend, he's on game day and on big noon kickoff. And I was on the set, and I was like, why did we let this guy out? I mean, like, I think he's a great football player, but, like, here
Interesting, though, that wouldn't split the vote with Shedeur Sanders. Because
Shedeur just said he should get it.
Right. I mean, so they're doing a nice job of pushing Hunter and not both of them, because we've seen that happen where it can split votes with a team when you have two superstar-type players. The USC game could have been a moment for Tyler Warren. USC hasn't followed up and done their part by winning their games afterwards. It's turned into a mediocre, 500 team somewhat
and
in
even
the Big Ten.
Opposite, it was Texas, Oklahoma. So there were so many people watching that game. You didn't even have the audience in that game that you would want for that moment for 17 catches, which is insane.
Certainly nothing set up. It would be nice if Maryland was a really good program in the last game of the year. You could have Tyler Warren.
But all those other guys, they don't do one thing. They don't block. This guy blocks, he throws, he runs, he does everything.
And that's why I say, Tom, maybe an invitation to New York. Right?
I'm not
maybe
disagreeing with you. My argument is not on the merits. My argument is on the system.
Sure.
And right now, if you read every media account, it looks cooked in the books for Travis Hunter to get the thing. Now, who comes in second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth? I think some of that's going to depend. If Oregon ends up undefeated with that win over Ohio State, and if they go win the Big Ten championship game, because that's still voting is still going on then. There's a guy that jumps up there. What does Boise State do down the stretch with that running back? There's any number of guys. I don't think anybody from Texas is involved. I don't think the guy from – but, I think there's a pretty clear path for him to be in the top five, no question.
Even after I gave my vote on this show, that's not going to make a difference.
You don't have a vote, but I know someone who does.
There's
Are we allowed to disclose
some
that?
formalities to go through just yet with all that. So
the background check?
Not quite yet. Yeah, maybe something like that. So we'll talk about that in more detail when it comes to it. But I would love to see him, at least an invitation to New York would be really cool to celebrate this guy and what he does on the field. The merits of it. Sure, he's a complete long shot when it comes to winning, and part of it is the schedule, part of it all that type of stuff. But what he's done on the field is tremendous. Certainly the Mackey Award. It should be in his back pocket already at this particular point. I don't know if there's any other tight ends that can compare to what he's done so far. But wow, it's just to celebrate Tyler Warren and what he's done and what he's meant to this year's team and to the program is tremendous.
Well, what he's meant to this year's team. This is a completely average offensive football team without him. When you look across the board, it's a good offensive football team. With him, they become a very good offensive football team because of his presence. Yeah,
because when you game plan now, you have to always know where he is. If you're not playing just a regular offense, once he gets back at quarterback, now we got to practice that. Here comes the option. Here comes all these different things. And now I have to waste time on that. Plus, I have to game plan for that. So how much time do you really have to get ready? He makes it hard on you if he's not available, if he's not that guy.
Right.
And he's not in the game, and you're just playing, the tailbacks. It's a totally different. They would see all kinds of really some, exotic stuff. They don't see that now with him because he creates a lot of problems for you.
And I think he's a guy that should be, certainly in the conversation for the Silver Football Award for the Big Ten MVP. He should be. Show me a guy who's more valuable to their team than he is. That to me, that's a very underrated award. Having coached two guys that won it, it's a big deal when you get that call.
That's a good point.
He certainly should get that as a starting point. Certainly the Mackey Award, the Bolitnikoff Award is something. He's going to get hardware. Certainly, our voters in Philly for the Maxwell Club, do your job. Yeah. Vote for Tyler Warren.
More than double the amount of receptions of anybody else on the team. So he's had a tremendous year. Okay, so Minnesota, sweat through that one. Hopefully Penn State can get past that. Maryland's waiting for senior day. And then if you get through that one, you're sitting at 11-1, and you're just figuring out who your opponent's going to be in the college football playoff. If things fall really fortunately for you, you might have a game on December 7th for the Big Ten championship. Tom Bradley, Jay
hopefully
Paterno,
we get a
night.
Hopefully, I selfishly, I'm going to lobby for it. Give us the Friday night playoff game so we're at night, not noon kickoff.
Yeah, would be great. On
and you 20th, can avoid conflict with graduation.
White
on
out,
Sunday.
the whole deal.
Yeah.
Let's go. We got Minnesota first, knock on wood, then Maryland, Then we'll see what we go from there. For Tom Bradley, Jay Paterno, I'm Todd Sadowski. Thanks for checking out the Nittany Game Week podcast and consuming all of our content at NittanyGameWeek.com.